Thinking about moving to the Philippines to date? Stop now. A fatal mistake can turn your dream into a nightmare. Find out what to avoid before taking the next step. Your decision could change everything. Don't risk your future. Imagine this. You meet someone amazing in a place where the sun always shines and smiles come easy. At first, everything seems perfect. You are new in the Philippines, excited about the promise of a fresh start and the chance to find true love. You meet Anna at a small gathering in a quiet town by the sea. She has a warm laugh and eyes that sparkle when she speaks about her family and her dreams. Every day with her feels like living in a beautiful dream. You walk on sandy beaches, share meals of freshly cooked rice and fish, and talk about everything from your childhood memories to your hopes for the future. At first, you feel like you have found someone who understands you in a way you never have before. The early days are filled with simple joys. Anna shows you the beauty of her culture, the friendly neighbors, the delicious local food, and the tradition of close family ties. Everything seems like a perfect story unfolding before your eyes. You quickly become attached to her, and you imagine a future where the two of you build a life together. In the beginning, every conversation flows easily. She listens with genuine interest when you talk about your past in your home country, and you listen carefully as she explains the little traditions that make life in the Philippines so special. The language barrier does not seem to matter because feelings go beyond words, and every shared smile bridges any gap. However, as the weeks turn into months, you begin to notice small signs that something might not be as simple as it appeared at first. At first, it is just little things that you try to ignore because your heart is full of hope and trust. You notice that Anna sometimes avoids giving direct answers when you ask about her future plans. When you ask if she has thoughts about where you might live together in the long run, her answers become vague and sometimes change unexpectedly. She might say, "I don't know, we will see," one day, and then on another day, she seems excited about a plan that she suddenly changes without explanation. You try to brush it off as the natural flow of things, but the uncertainty leaves you with a small, uneasy feeling deep inside. As your relationship grows, Anna begins to introduce you to more people from her life. You meet her family during a visit to her parents' home, a modest house full of laughter and busy activity. At first, you feel welcome and part of the family, but then you notice a clear boundary between you and the rest of them. They speak politely and smile, but there is an unspoken rule about your role in their life. Their questions about your background, and your plans for the future are polite but firm, leaving you feeling like you are being measured rather than welcomed. Their careful, sometimes cold behavior makes you wonder if they see you as a temporary visitor, rather than someone who could be a permanent part of their lives. The language you share also becomes a barrier in subtle ways. Even though Anna speaks good English and you learn a few words in her native tongue, you sometimes find that cultural expressions and nuances get lost in translation. One day, while talking about responsibilities, you mention that you are looking forward to taking the next step in your relationship. Instead of enthusiasm, you sense hesitation in her voice and a quick change of topic. It is as if she is afraid to commit to something more serious. This happens a few times, and you start to worry that you might be misunderstanding the signs. You ask yourself if your excitement is clouding your judgment, or if there are real issues beneath the surface. Another turning point comes when you notice that Anna's behavior starts to change when her friends are around. In private, she seems tender and caring, but in the company of others, she appears reserved and cautious. You remember one evening at a small gathering with her friends when you attempted to share a personal story about your feelings, only to be met with awkward silence. Her friends exchanged glances, and Anna quickly changed the subject. This reaction makes you feel isolated and even more unsure about the real status of your relationship. You begin to question if her warm smiles and soft words are reserved only for moments when no one else is watching, and if you are just a convenient companion rather than a true partner. In another instance, you start to feel the weight of financial expectations. In the Philippines, it is common for families to share responsibilities, and sometimes expectations can differ from what you are used to. One afternoon, Anna invites you to help her with errands and suddenly brings up the topic of money. She mentions in a casual way that it would be good if you could contribute more to shared expenses. You feel taken aback because you had assumed that both of you would support each other equally. The conversation is brief, and you are left with the impression that something deeper is at play. You worry that perhaps your differences in financial habits might be a sign of more serious underlying issues about expectations and commitments. As time passes, the small red flags accumulate. The carefree days when you believed that love was simple and everything was clear are now mixed with moments of doubt. You notice that sometimes Anna disappears for long periods without clear explanation. A friend of hers once mentioned that she has a habit of visiting relatives far away, but the frequency and timing of these absences seem more than usual. When you ask her directly, she gives you a smile and says it is nothing to worry about. Yet your mind fills with questions. Are these trips just innocent family visits, or is there something else behind her sudden need for space? Your emotional state becomes a constant roller coaster. One moment, you are filled with hope and anticipation, and the next, anxiety and uncertainty cloud your mind. You remember one evening when the sky was painted with the soft colors of dusk. You sat together by the ocean, and Anna spoke softly about how much she enjoyed your company. But then her tone changed as she mentioned the need to focus on her personal projects. She added that love should not slow down one's dreams, and that made you wonder if she was truly interested in building a life together, or if she was trying to keep you at a comfortable distance. The balance between personal freedom and commitment becomes a recurring theme in your conversations, and each discussion leaves you feeling more confused than before. Even though these doubts build slowly, the feeling of uncertainty grows stronger with every passing day. You try to remember the moments when everything felt so clear and genuine, but now you find yourself in a maze of mixed signals. The simple words that once meant a promise of forever now seem empty, and every smile hides a mystery. You begin to see that the perfect picture you once admired was layered with complexities that you had not noticed until now. The sunny beaches and warm nights mask a struggle to truly connect on a deeper level, where expectations clash with reality. 1. Afternoon, as you sit alone in a quiet cafe overlooking a bustling street, you reflect on your journey so far. The memories of laughter, shared meals, and whispered dreams fill your mind. Yet they are now accompanied by the pain of missed connections and unspoken truths. You realize that love, as beautiful as it seemed, is more complicated than you ever imagined. The initial excitement of finding someone special in a foreign land has slowly been replaced by a deep sense of introspection. You start to question whether the cultural differences, the unspoken rules, and the elusive nature of promises are signs of inevitable heartbreak or just temporary misunderstandings. It is at this moment that you understand a fundamental lesson. No relationship is without its challenges. However, some challenges may hint at a deeper disconnect that cannot be ignored. The early signs that you once brushed off as simple misunderstandings now weigh heavily on your mind. You think about the importance of clear communication and the need to truly understand each other's expectations. You begin to see that a relationship built on a foundation of mismatched values and unspoken agreements can lead to heartbreak, no matter how strong the initial spark may have been. In the following weeks, you decide to have a long, honest conversation with Anna. You express your feelings about the growing uncertainties and ask her to share her true thoughts about the future. The conversation is difficult, filled with pauses and careful words. Anna listens quietly, and when she speaks, her voice is soft yet full of an emotion you have not heard before. She admits that she has always feared that getting too close might mean losing some part of her independence, a fear rooted in a past of watching relationships crumble due to unrealistic expectations. She explains that while she cares for you deeply, she struggles with the idea of fully merging her life with someone else. You listen, feeling both empathy and sadness as you realize that what you thought was a dream might not be meant to last in the way you imagined. This moment of vulnerability becomes a turning point in your journey together. You both decide that it is important to take a step back and reflect on what you truly want. The conversation does not provide all the answers, but it does open a door to understanding the complex emotions that have built up over time. You realize that sometimes love requires hard questions and even harder answers. The clarity that comes from honest dialogue is bittersweet, as it shows you that the path ahead might not be as straightforward as you once hoped. In the end, the journey that began with so much promise now reveals its true nature, a mix of joy, uncertainty, and the inevitable challenges of blending two different worlds. The story of your relationship in the Philippines is not a fairy tale with a guaranteed happy ending. but a real-life experience that teaches you about the importance of being true to yourself. You learn that every relationship, regardless of where it begins, has its own set of challenges that must be faced with courage and honesty. The red flags you noticed were not signs of failure from the start, but rather important signals that something needed to change before it was too late. Now, as you stand at the crossroads of your future, you carry with you the lessons learned from this experience. The perfect image you once had is now replaced by a more realistic view of love, a view that accepts both the beauty and the pain that come with opening your heart. You understand that the journey of love is not always smooth, and that avoiding certain pitfalls can make all the difference between a fulfilling relationship and a regretful mistake. This experience has taught you that while the promise of love in a foreign land is enticing, it is essential to remain aware of the subtle signs that can turn a dream into a challenge. You move forward with a clearer mind, knowing that the next step in your life will be taken with caution and respect for both your own feelings and those of the person you choose to share your life with. The hope remains, even if it is now tempered by the wisdom gained from the difficulties you faced. The lessons of trust, communication, and understanding will guide you as you navigate future relationships, whether in the Philippines or anywhere else in the world. Ultimately, you realize that the most important part of any journey is the ability to learn from it, to recognize the signs before they become regrets, and to build a future based on honesty and mutual respect. In this story, you find not only the beauty of love, but also the complexity of human connections. The perfect beginning that once felt like a fairy tale now makes way for a more honest, real conversation about what love truly means. And so, as you continue to search for a meaningful relationship in the vibrant and challenging landscape of the Philippines, you carry with you the hope that, by learning from your past, you can avoid the mistakes that might have turned your dream into a nightmare. Many foreigners arrive in the Philippines with big dreams, believing that love will be as warm and welcoming as the tropical sunshine. They imagine a life filled with laughter, beautiful beaches, and endless smiles. At first, everything seems perfect. You meet someone special, someone who appears to understand you completely. However, as time passes, the perfect picture begins to crack, and hidden conflicts and tensions slowly emerge. This story shows the reality that many face, where the challenges of cultural differences, financial dependency, and unrealistic expectations create a complex and often painful situation. Imagine arriving in a small town near the ocean, where the rhythm of life is slow and gentle. You meet Maria, a kind and friendly woman who seems to embody the warmth of the place. Her laughter is infectious, and her smile lights up even the darkest days. In the beginning, everything seems to flow naturally. You share stories of your past, dreams for the future, and the simple joys of everyday life. Maria shows you the beauty of the Philippines, its vibrant festivals, its close-knit communities, and its deep respect for family traditions. You feel that you have found someone who can make your life complete. But as the days turn into weeks, subtle differences start to appear. At first, they are small things. The way Maria talks about her family, her expectations of your role in her life, and the unspoken rules that seem to guide every interaction. She often mentions how important it is to respect elders and follow the traditions passed down through generations. You try to understand, but soon you find that these cultural nuances are more than just interesting habits. They create tension between your expectations and the reality of her life. One evening, while having dinner at a local eatery, Maria casually brings up the subject of money. In her world, family is the center of everything, and financial support is seen as a shared duty. She hints that it would be nice if you could help more with expenses, not just for the two of you, but sometimes even for her family. At first, you think it is just a friendly suggestion. But as time goes on, you realize that there is an unspoken expectation for you to contribute in ways that feel overwhelming. You start to wonder if your presence is valued only as someone who can help ease the financial burden on her relatives. This tension grows even more as you begin to spend more time with her family. They are polite and welcoming, yet you sense a distance in their behavior. Their eyes sometimes linger on you as if you are an outsider, someone who is not fully a part of their world. They ask questions about your income, your plans for the future, and whether you will be able to provide for Maria in the long run. You feel the weight of their expectations and begin to understand that love, here, is tied closely with financial stability and the ability to support the entire extended family. Cultural differences also lead to moments of misunderstanding and hurt. In your home country, independence and self-expression are valued traits. You are used to openly discussing your feelings and making decisions based solely on what you believe is best for you. However, in Maria's world, decisions are made together, and sometimes that means sacrificing your own desires for the sake of harmony within the family. There is a constant push and pull between what you want and what is expected of you. Simple disagreements about how to spend your free time or how to manage money begin to escalate into larger conflicts. The differences in communication style, where you prefer direct conversation and she values subtle hints and context, create misunderstandings that neither of you quite know how to resolve. As months pass, the initial passion and joy that you felt start to be overshadowed by these daily conflicts. There is a growing sense of frustration, especially when you realize that the issues are not just about small habits, but about the very foundation of your relationship. You begin to see that Maria's expectations are deeply rooted in her cultural upbringing, expectations that you did not fully understand when you first fell in love. There are days when you feel like you are walking on eggshells, trying hard, not to upset her or her family, and every word you say is weighed against a backdrop of hidden meanings and unspoken rules. One day, while walking along the beach, you try to express your feelings about these issues. You tell Maria that you feel overwhelmed by the constant pressure to meet expectations that seem unrealistic for a relationship built on love and mutual understanding. Instead of hearing your honest emotions, Maria grows silent. The air between you becomes heavy with tension. She explains in a soft voice that it is normal to have different ideas about life and that you should respect the ways of her culture. But you feel that she is not really listening to you. She is merely trying to preserve a way of life that has been in her family for generations. The situation worsens when jealousy starts to creep into your relationship. In the Philippines, it is common for social circles to be very close, and sometimes the boundaries between friends and romantic partners blur. You notice that Maria receives many messages and visits from her friends, and while she claims that these interactions are innocent, you cannot shake off the feeling of unease. One day, you see her laughing with a close friend, and a wave of jealousy hits you hard. You question whether her affection is really meant for you or if you are just one of many in a social network that values companionship over romantic commitment. This jealousy quickly turns into suspicion, and every time she greets someone with a friendly hug or a pat on the back, your heart sinks a little further. The emotional strain takes a toll on your mental well-being. You find yourself constantly questioning your decisions and wondering if you made a mistake coming here. The initial excitement of a new love story has now turned into a daily struggle, where each day brings new challenges that make you question if the dream you once had is slipping away. The stress builds as you face not only the cultural clashes and financial expectations, but also the harsh realization that love alone might not be enough to bridge the gap between two very different worlds. In one particularly difficult conversation, you confront Maria about the pressures you are feeling. You explain that while you love her, you feel lost in the middle of conflicting expectations and responsibilities that you never imagined would be part of a romantic relationship. Maria listens quietly, her eyes filling with tears. She admits that she too has been struggling with the pressure to conform to her family's ways and the fear of losing a part of her identity by fully merging your lives. She explains that her behavior is a way of protecting herself and her family, a habit ingrained in her since childhood. Even as she speaks, you see the conflict in her eyes, a deep sadness born from the clash between modern love and traditional expectations. The conversation ends without a clear solution. You both agree that there is a need for change, but the path forward remains uncertain. The bond that once seemed unbreakable now feels fragile, stretched thin by the weight of hidden expectations and unspoken fears. The dream of a simple, joyful romance is replaced by the reality of a relationship that requires constant negotiation, compromise, and even sacrifice. You start to realize that what many see as a fairy tale in a tropical paradise hides a truth far more complicated and challenging. Financial issues also begin to create a significant rift. Over time, you notice that the money you send or contribute is not just for you and Maria, but is expected to help support her entire family. This expectation grows stronger, especially during times of financial difficulty. Maria's family, who once seemed welcoming, now appear to be silently judging your every move. They compare your income, your spending habits, and your lifestyle with those of others, creating a sense of inadequacy in you. You feel trapped in a situation where love is conditional upon your ability to provide financially, and the pressure becomes almost unbearable. The simple act of loving someone transforms into a constant battle of meeting expectations that you never signed up for. Amid these financial strains, you find yourself taking on responsibilities that stretch far beyond what you envisioned. There are times when you work extra hours or take on additional jobs just to make sure you can support not only your life with Maria, but also the needs of her family. This burden creates a distance between you and the person you love. Instead of spending time together, you are constantly worried about money and the next bill to pay. The romance fades, replaced by a growing resentment over the sacrifices you are forced to make. Cultural misunderstandings add another layer of tension to your already strained relationship. Simple disagreements, such as how to celebrate a holiday or which traditions to follow, become major disputes. You have a different perspective on life, and your ideas of freedom and individualism clash with the collective mindset that Maria grew up with. When you suggest changes that would make your life easier or more aligned with your personal values, Maria's family often reacts with disapproval. Their insistence on following traditions that seem outdated to you only deepens the divide between your worlds. In the quiet moments when you try to explain your point of view, you feel as though you are speaking a different language, one that is not understood by those around you. The strain of these conflicts begins to affect your relationship on a very personal level. The warmth and intimacy you once shared with Maria give way to long periods of silence, where every word is measured and every emotion is guarded. Even the small, everyday moments that once brought you joy now seem heavy with unspoken tension. The air in your home grows thick with the burden of unmet expectations and unresolved issues. You feel isolated, as if you are trapped between two worlds that refuse to merge. One rainy afternoon, as you sit in a small cafe with the sound of distant thunder, you reflect on the path you have taken. The dreams of a perfect romance seem to be fading, replaced by a stark realization of the challenges that come with merging different cultures and expectations. You think about all the sacrifices you have made, the extra hours spent working, and the countless conversations that ended in tears. In that moment, you begin to wonder if love is enough to overcome the deep-rooted differences and hidden pressures that have grown between you and Maria. The situation becomes even more serious when you realize that these conflicts are not isolated incidents, but are symptoms of a larger issue. The cultural gap, the financial burden, and the clash of expectations are all intertwined, creating a complex web of tension that is difficult to untangle. You start to see that the problems you face are not just about two individuals trying to make a relationship work, but about the collision of two very different worlds, one that values tradition and collective responsibility, and another that prizes personal freedom and individual achievement. In the midst of this struggle, you try to find a way to reconnect with Maria. You suggest spending time together without the interference of family expectations, hoping that a private moment might help you both rediscover the love that brought you together. For a brief time, you succeed. You share stories, laughter, and even tears as you both open up about your fears and hopes. However, the moment of closeness is short-lived. The pull of external expectations is too strong, and soon, the old patterns resurface. Maria finds herself torn between the love she has for you and the deep-rooted loyalty she feels for her family and culture. The internal conflict in her becomes visible in the way she avoids eye contact and in the hesitations that mark her responses. You realize that the bond you share is under constant assault from forces that neither of you can control. As days turn into weeks, the stress begins to erode the foundation of your relationship. Every smile hides a worry. Every laugh conceals an unspoken doubt. You find yourself constantly on guard, waiting for the next reminder of the cultural, financial, or personal expectations that threaten to pull you apart. The vibrant dream of a life together slowly transforms into a daily struggle for survival. Fight against the invisible forces that push you in opposite directions. In the quiet of a late evening, when the noise of the day has finally subsided, you sit alone and reflect on the gravity of the situation. You think about all the moments that seemed so promising at the start, now overshadowed by the harsh reality of conflicting worlds. The weight of all the challenges, from the financial pressures to the cultural misunderstandings and hidden jealousies, becomes almost too much to bear. It is in these moments of solitude that you realize the true seriousness of the conflict. Love in the Philippines, or anywhere truly different, is not just about passion and beauty. It is about facing and overcoming deep-seated differences that can tear even the strongest bond apart. As you prepare to leave the cafe and step back into the stormy night, you know that the journey ahead is uncertain. The conflicts and tensions in your relationship are far from resolved, and the path forward requires difficult choices and honest conversations. You are left with a question that lingers in the cold rain. Can love survive when the forces of tradition, family expectations, and personal dreams collide so violently? And if the answer is not clear now, what steps can be taken to rebuild a connection that feels lost in the chaos? This story is not an end, but a turning point, a moment to question, to learn, and to prepare for what comes next. In the following segment, we will explore how to navigate these turbulent waters. We will look into practical steps and heartfelt advice on dealing with cultural clashes, managing financial expectations, and opening honest communication channels. Stay with us as we dive deeper into the challenges and uncover ways to possibly mend a bond that feels torn between two very different worlds. Let me tell you a story about how many foreigners face real problems in relationships here in the Philippines. A friend of mine, Mark, came to the Philippines full of hope. He believed that love here was as bright and warm as the tropical sun. When he first arrived, everything seemed perfect. He met a woman named Liza, whose smile could light up a room, and whose laughter was as comforting as a gentle breeze on a hot day. In the beginning, they shared moments full of joy, walking along white sandy beaches, sharing simple meals of rice and fish, and talking for hours about their dreams. Mark felt that he had found his paradise, a place where true love could flourish, away from the cold routines of his life back home. At first, Liza introduced him to her close-knit family and friends. Mark was touched by the warm welcome he received, and he believed that this was the beginning of something wonderful. However, as the days turned into weeks, subtle signs of trouble began to appear. In the early days, there were just small differences, little habits that didn't quite match what Mark was used to. For example, Liza often talked about her family as if they were a team and expected him to join that team. Mark was not prepared for the heavy family involvement. Soon, he found himself not only spending time with Liza, but also helping out with family gatherings and even sending money to assist with family needs. Mark soon discovered that his new life was not as free as he thought. One day, while he was having dinner with Liza's relatives, the conversation turned unexpectedly to money matters. They casually mentioned that Mark should help more with expenses because, in their culture, supporting the family is part of a relationship. At first, Mark thought that was just a friendly suggestion, but soon it became clear that he was expected to provide financial support not only for himself and Liza but for her whole family. He began to feel a deep pressure that made him question if love alone was enough to bear such heavy responsibilities. Another friend, John, had a similar experience. John came here to find a new start and to experience love in a warm, welcoming country. He met a woman named Maria, who seemed to understand him perfectly. They enjoyed long walks along the shore and quiet moments in small cafes. However, John was not ready for the many hidden expectations that came with his relationship. Maria, like many Filipinas, grew up with strong family ties and traditions. Her parents expected that any man who came close to their daughter would eventually become part of their family, financially and emotionally. John soon found himself caught in a web of obligations, paying for family events, helping with bills, and even lending money when times were tough. These expectations were not clearly discussed at the beginning, but they slowly became a heavy burden on him. In both Mark's and John's cases, the problems did not start with bad intentions. They both genuinely cared for their partners and were happy at first. But as time went on, small issues grew into serious conflicts. There was a common theme here. Many foreigners fall in love with the idea of a romantic paradise, but they are not fully aware of the cultural differences that can lead to misunderstandings. For example, many Filipinos are raised with the idea that family always comes first. This means that a partner is not just an individual relationship, but also a bridge to an entire family. When a foreigner steps into this world, they often face expectations that can be very different from what they imagined. Another common story is about a woman named Carla and a foreigner named David. David came here with high hopes of finding love and a better life. Carla was charming and friendly, and she quickly won his heart. But within a few months, David found himself deeply involved with Carla's family. They expected him to take part in family decisions and even to contribute to the household income. David, who had a modest job and saved carefully, soon began to struggle with the added financial pressure. He felt trapped, and the love that once brought him joy started to turn into a source of constant worry. He tried to talk to Carla about these issues, but she always told him that it was normal and that he should be happy to be part of her family. The situation became so intense that David felt he was losing himself. He was caught in a cycle where every effort to please led to more demands and more pressure. This story is not rare. It is something that happens all the time, where the initial beauty of romance is clouded by the reality of everyday expectations. One evening, Mark sat alone on a quiet beach, thinking about his situation. The ocean, which once symbolized endless possibilities, now reminded him of the challenges that lay ahead. He remembered the early days when every smile from Liza felt like a promise of a bright future. But now, every conversation about money or family obligations felt like a warning sign. Mark was not the only one who felt this way. Many foreigners come to the Philippines with dreams of love and happiness, only to discover that the cultural ties here run deep and are not easily changed. The sense of community and family, which is a beautiful part of Filipino culture, can also become a source of tension when expectations are not clearly communicated. This is something that many people have faced, and it continues to be a major challenge for those who step into these relationships. John, on the other hand, had his breaking point when he realized that Maria, the woman he loved, was caught between her own desires and the expectations of her family. Maria tried to balance her love for John with the pressure from her parents. There were times when she would say that she loved him, but also needed to take care of family matters. John felt that he was being used as a solution for problems he did not sign up for. The constant pull between what he wanted and what was expected of him led to frequent arguments. One particular argument happened on a rainy night. John asked Maria why it was so hard for her to put her family's needs aside for a moment so that they could enjoy their own time together. Maria, with tears in her eyes, explained that her family was everything to her and that abandoning them was not an option. John felt trapped by this response. He wanted to be loved for who he was, not for what he could provide for a family he barely knew. This kind of conflict is common, and it shows how the good intentions of both sides can lead to painful misunderstandings when expectations are not aligned. There is also the issue of communication. Many foreigners and Filipinos speak simple English, but language is more than just words. It is about the meaning behind them. For instance, when David tried to express his worries about the financial pressure he was feeling, Carla would often respond with vague reassurances like, "Don't worry, everything will be fine." These words, though meant to comfort, ended up making David feel ignored. He needed clear answers, and the indirect way of speaking left him more confused. This is another frequent problem. The cultural tendency to avoid direct confrontation can lead to feelings of uncertainty and mistrust. Foreigners may not realize that what they see as evasive behavior is often just a way of preserving harmony, a trait that is highly valued in Filipino society. Yet when it comes to serious matters like money and commitment, this indirect communication style can cause a great deal of frustration and hurt. For many, the shock comes when their partner suddenly seems to change without warning. Mark experienced this when, after months of what he thought was a strong and loving relationship, Liza began to withdraw. She became distant, spending more time with her family and friends, and less time with him. One day, without any clear reason, she stopped returning his calls and messages. Mark was left confused and heartbroken. He learned later that this kind of situation is not unusual. Some Filipinas may decide that the pressures of a relationship with a foreigner are too great, especially if it means stepping away from family expectations or risking conflict with their own cultural norms. In many cases, the relationship ends suddenly, leaving the foreign partner to deal with the emotional fallout and the harsh realization that love, as perfect as it may seem in the beginning, can quickly turn into pain. There are also stories of Jealousy and mistrust that often arise in these situations. When a foreigner sees their partner interacting closely with others, friends, relatives, even coworkers, it can spark feelings of jealousy. In the Philippines, social interactions are often very warm and physical, with hugs and friendly touches that are normal expressions of affection. However, to someone not used to this level of physical contact with friends or family, it can feel like a threat. John once found himself upset when he saw Maria laughing and chatting with an old friend from her neighborhood. Though it was a friendly encounter, John could not shake the feeling that something was not right. He confronted her, only to be met with confusion and hurt. Maria tried to explain that such behavior was normal, a simple part of how Filipinos show care and support for one another. But for John, the misunderstanding grew into a deeper sense of insecurity, a reminder that love here was complicated by a mix of emotions and cultural practices that he could not easily understand. Financial struggles added another layer to these already complicated relationships. David, for example, worked long hours to keep up with the demands placed upon him. Every time he thought of a quiet dinner or a peaceful evening at home, he was reminded of the many financial obligations he had to meet. The constant need to prove his ability to provide put him under immense stress. He began to feel that no matter how much he earned, it was never enough to satisfy the expectations of Carla and her family. This financial strain is something that many foreigners experience here. It is not just about money, but about a sense of responsibility that can feel overwhelming and unending. The promise of love and romance slowly turns into a struggle to keep up with a never-ending list of demands that come from the heart of Filipino culture. All these stories show that the difficulties in relationships with Filipinos are not rare. They happen again and again. Many foreigners come here with high hopes, but soon find themselves caught in a web of financial expectations, indirect communication, and cultural misunderstandings. The problems are deep-rooted and complex. They involve not just two individuals, but entire families and a way of life that values unity, respect, and tradition over personal desires. The love that once seemed simple and beautiful becomes entangled, with obligations and pressures that are hard to escape. Mark, John, and David are not alone in their experiences. Countless others have faced similar challenges, where the initial dream of a paradise of love turns into a difficult journey filled with unexpected obstacles. One common theme in all these stories is the realization that love in the Philippines is never just about two people. It is about being part of a larger family and community, where every decision and every gesture carries extra weight. This reality can be beautiful when both partners understand and accept it, but it can also lead to heartache when one person feels overwhelmed or betrayed by these expectations. The cultural differences, the financial burdens, and the constant need to balance individual desires with family responsibilities create a tension that many find too heavy to bear. As we look at these real stories and common experiences, it becomes clear that the challenges are not insurmountable, but they do require careful thought and honest communication. Many have learned the hard way that ignoring these issues can lead to heartbreak and loss. The promise of an easy, carefree romance fades when reality sets in, leaving behind lessons that are both painful and enlightening. What can be done to navigate these turbulent waters? How can one find a balance between respecting cultural traditions and preserving personal freedom? And is it possible to build a lasting relationship that honors both love and family expectations without losing oneself in the process? Stay tuned, because in our next segment, we will explore practical advice and strategies to deal with these very issues, helping you understand how to bridge the gap between different cultures and expectations without sacrificing your own happiness. Many foreigners come to the Philippines with high hopes and dreams of finding a warm, caring love that will change their lives. Many of these people arrive with a belief that life here is as bright as the sunshine and as gentle as the ocean breeze. They imagine a life filled with laughter, long walks along the beach, and evenings spent talking under the stars. However, as many have discovered, the reality can be very different from the picture in their minds. I want to share some real stories and common experiences that many foreigners have faced when trying to build a relationship in this country. These stories show that the problems are frequent and that many people have gone through similar difficulties. Take the story of Michael, for example. Michael arrived in the Philippines with a heart full of hope and a mind open to new experiences. he met a woman named Angela, whose smile was warm and inviting. At first, everything seemed perfect. They would meet for coffee at small local cafes, take walks along busy city streets, and spend hours talking about their families, their pasts, and their dreams for the future. Michael felt that he had finally found someone who understood him and who could show him the beauty of Filipino life. Angela introduced him to her close family, and Michael was impressed by the strong bonds and the deep respect that they all showed for her. In the early days, Angela's family made Michael feel welcome, and he thought that he had become part of a loving circle. However, as time went by, subtle differences and challenges began to show. Michael started noticing that Angela's family expected him to take on responsibilities that he had never considered when he first arrived. For instance, during family gatherings, discussions about money and financial support would come up often. Angela's relatives would mention, in a casual way, that a man should help out with expenses or even contribute to family needs if he really cared for their daughter. At first, Michael tried to laugh it off, thinking it was just a cultural habit. But soon these expectations became a heavy burden on him. Another friend, Sarah, also experienced difficulties that she had not foreseen. Sarah came here to explore new opportunities and to experience a different kind of love. She met a charming man named Roberto in a busy market area of a small town. Roberto was friendly and kind, and Sarah was swept away by the ease of their conversation and the simplicity of their first meetings. They enjoyed eating local dishes, visiting colorful festivals, and taking boat rides on quiet rivers. Yet, after a few months, Sarah noticed a pattern that began to worry her. Roberto's family was very involved in his daily life, and they had strong opinions about how his relationship should develop. Every time Sarah would suggest spending a weekend together or taking a short trip, Roberto would say that he had to help his family with chores or that they had important plans for a family event. Slowly, Sarah felt that she was not becoming an independent partner in the relationship, but rather someone who was being judged by a group of people she barely knew. There is also the story of Daniel, who arrived in the Philippines with dreams of romance that would sweep him off his feet. He met a woman named Carla, whose laughter and energy lit up every room. In the beginning, Daniel and Carla enjoyed all the best parts of Filipino life: sunny days on the beach, late-night dinners with friends, and even the warmth of impromptu family celebrations. However, Daniel soon learned that in many cases, love in the Philippines is never just about the two people in a relationship. Carla's world was filled with expectations that came from her entire family. Daniel began to see that the time he thought was meant for just the two of them was often interrupted by calls, visits, and obligations that involved Carla's extended family. When Daniel tried to talk about having more time for just the two of them, Carla would say that spending time with family was natural and very important in her life. Daniel understood that family is a big part of Filipino culture, but he also felt that his own needs for privacy and personal space were being ignored. The conflict between wanting a private love life and the constant presence of family became a source of tension that grew day by day. In many of these stories, a common theme emerges. Foreigners, like Michael, Sarah, and Daniel, come to the Philippines with the idea that love can be simple and carefree. They are attracted by the promise of warm smiles, friendly greetings, and a strong sense of community. However, the reality is that relationships here come with many hidden challenges. The deep-rooted family values and traditions that make the Philippines such a unique place can also lead to unexpected conflicts. Many Filipinos are raised to believe that a relationship is not just between two people, but involves the entire family. This belief means that when someone falls in love with a Filipino, they must also be prepared to accept the family's expectations, financial responsibilities, and sometimes even the constant interference of relatives in daily decisions. 1. Common difficulty is the issue of money. It is not unusual for a Filipino family to expect their son or daughter's partner to help with household expenses, support family gatherings, or even contribute to unexpected financial emergencies. This situation can put a lot of pressure on someone who may not have planned for such responsibilities when they first decided to pursue love in the Philippines. For example, Michael found himself having to send money back home not only to support himself but also to help Angela's family pay for bills and other needs. At first, he thought it was a minor part of the cultural exchange, but soon it became clear that these financial obligations were not optional. They were a sign of the war, deep ties that bound family members together, and refusing to help could be seen as a rejection of those values. Another problem is the clash of expectations. Many foreigners expect that once they are in a loving relationship, they will have the freedom to build a life together on their own terms. In contrast, many Filipinos grow up with the idea that individual desires must often be balanced with the needs of the family. When differences in these expectations arise, it can lead to misunderstandings and arguments. Sarah, for instance, tried to convince Roberto that it was important for them to have a little time to themselves, away from the constant family events. Roberto, however, felt that spending time with family was an essential part of his identity, and that any attempt to separate himself from his roots was a rejection of his past. The conversation turned into a difficult discussion about values, where both sides had strong feelings. These kinds of conflicts can be very hard to resolve because they touch on core beliefs and the way people see their lives. Communication is another important area where problems can arise. In many cases, language is not the only barrier. Even when both people speak simple English, there can be differences in the way they express feelings and handle conflicts. For example, when Daniel tried to talk to Carla about his need for more personal space, her responses were indirect and vague. Instead of saying clearly that she understood his need, she would use phrases like, "It will be all right," or "Let us just see how things go." These kinds of responses left Daniel feeling uncertain and frustrated. The indirect way of communicating, which is common in Filipino culture as a way to avoid conflict, often leads to misunderstandings with foreigners who are used to more direct expressions of emotion. This difference in communication styles means that many issues are left unresolved, slowly building up and creating an atmosphere of tension and mistrust. There are also stories where the difficulties in relationships lead to sudden and painful breakups. Many foreigners have found themselves heartbroken when their partner suddenly disappears from their lives without a clear explanation. One such story is that of Kevin, who fell deeply in love with a woman named Liza. In the beginning, Kevin and Liza were inseparable. They enjoyed the beauty of the local landscapes, shared many laughs, and dreamed of a future together. But after a few months, Kevin noticed that Liza started to pull away. She became less responsive to his messages, began spending more time with her friends and family, and even started to avoid making plans together. One day, Kevin tried to reach out to her, only to discover that she had left without saying goodbye. He later learned from mutual friends that this kind of disappearance was not uncommon. Some Filipinas, faced with the intense pressure of balancing love with family obligations, sometimes choose to step away suddenly, leaving their foreign partners to deal with the shock and confusion. Kevin's story is a harsh reminder that, for many, the dream of a perfect romance can quickly turn into a painful lesson. In all these stories, a recurring question arises. What do you do when the reality of a relationship does not match the dream you had when you first arrived? Many foreigners are not fully aware of the cultural expectations that come with dating in the Philippines until they are deep into the relationship. The initial excitement and the beauty of new love are often overshadowed by the practical challenges of financial support, the constant involvement of family, and the difficulties of direct communication. These issues are not unique to one person or one relationship. They are common challenges that many have faced. As we reflect on these experiences, it is important to ask ourselves, have you ever encountered a situation where the reality of a relationship was very different from what you expected? Do you know someone who faced similar challenges when dating in a different culture? How did they handle the pressure from family expectations and financial responsibilities? And if you are considering a relationship with someone from the Philippines, what steps can you take to ensure that both of you have clear and honest communication about your needs and expectations? It is not easy to navigate these complex situations. When a relationship is caught between the desire for personal freedom and the weight of cultural traditions, both partners must be willing to listen and understand each other. The stories of Michael, Sarah, Daniel, and Kevin show us that there is often no simple solution. Instead, it takes a great deal of patience, compromise, and sometimes painful acceptance of differences. It also calls for a serious reflection on what one truly wants from a relationship. Is it possible to balance love and family obligations? Can two people from very different backgrounds build a future together without sacrificing their own identities? These are not questions with easy answers. Many have tried and learned the hard way that love in the Philippines often means becoming part of a larger family, where your actions are not only about you, but about everyone connected to your partner. It is important to understand that while this can create a strong and supportive network, it can also lead to feelings of being overwhelmed or trapped. When expectations are not discussed openly from the start, misunderstandings can build up over time. This is why many foreigners eventually advise others to have honest conversations about their expectations, finances, and the role of family in the relationship before things become too complicated. Another common experience shared by many is the feeling of isolation when conflicts arise. When disagreements about family involvement or financial support become too frequent, it can feel like you are alone in a struggle that you never signed up for. Imagine working hard every day only to come home and face a barrage of requests and expectations that drain your energy and spirit. This is not the kind of love that many people dream about when they imagine a simple, happy romance. Instead, it becomes a continuous battle where every small disagreement can trigger larger conflicts that leave both partners hurt and frustrated. Many who have faced these challenges eventually find that the initial spark of romance fades away under the weight of reality. They begin to question if the sacrifices they are making are truly worth the cost. It is not uncommon for foreigners to wonder if they should have known better before diving into a relationship where the cost of love is measured in both emotional and financial terms. This reflection often leads to deep personal questions. What is more important, being loved by someone who respects you and understands you, or fitting into a mold where you are expected to support a whole family? How do you balance your own needs with those of your partner and her relatives? And what happens when the pressure becomes too much to handle? As you think about these questions, consider the possibility that the solution may lie in better communication and setting clear boundaries early on. Many have learned from their painful experiences that discussing these issues openly can help prevent misunderstandings and heartache. It might not remove all the challenges, but it can make it easier to navigate the difficult times together. For those who have been in similar situations, sharing your story can be a way to help others avoid the same pitfalls. Have you ever felt that the love you dreamed of turned into a struggle because of hidden expectations? What steps did you take to resolve these issues, and what advice would you give to someone starting out in a relationship under similar circumstances? Now, as we come to this point in the conversation, I invite you to reflect on your own experiences or on the stories you have heard. Have you, or someone you know, faced these kinds of challenges in a relationship in the Philippines? What were the warning signs, and how did you handle the difficult moments? Did you find that open and honest discussion made a difference? Or were the cultural and financial pressures too overwhelming to overcome? Your thoughts and experiences are very important, and sharing them could help others who are struggling with the same issues. This discussion is not just about pointing out the difficulties, it is also about learning from them. When we talk openly about the problems that many foreigners face in relationships here, we create a space for understanding and growth. It is a reminder that while love is a beautiful and powerful force, it sometimes comes with challenges that can test our resolve. The experiences of Michael, Sarah, Daniel, and Kevin show that these challenges are not isolated incidents. They happen often, and many people have gone through similar trials. By sharing our stories and asking tough questions, we can work together to find ways to build relationships that respect both our personal needs and the cultural values that are important to our partners. And you? Have you ever encountered stories like these or experienced similar challenges yourself? Do you know someone who had to struggle with family expectations or financial pressures in their relationship here? Please leave your comment below and share your story. Your voice might help someone else understand that they are not alone in facing these issues. Your insight could be the very advice that prevents someone from making a decision they might later regret. As we move forward, in our conversation, we will explore more about how to handle these challenges. What are the best ways to set boundaries without hurting the ones you love? How can you make sure that your needs are heard in a relationship where family and tradition play a big role? These are tough questions, and the answers are not always simple. But by continuing this discussion and sharing our experiences, we can learn from one another and find better ways to move forward. Please continue the conversation by leaving your comments and thoughts below. Your experience, whether positive or negative, is valuable. This conversation can help many people avoid that crucial mistake of entering a relationship without being fully aware of the challenges. What do you think is the most important step to take when starting a relationship in the Philippines? How can someone protect themselves while still embracing the rich culture and warmth that makes this place so special? Let us know in the comments, and let's help each other build stronger, more understanding relationships. Many foreigners like John arrive in the Philippines dreaming of a warm romance and a fresh start. John meets Mia and initially experiences the beauty of love through simple dates, heartfelt conversations, and the welcoming embrace of Mia's close-knit family. However, as the relationship deepens, John soon faces unexpected financial pressures. During family gatherings, discussions subtly shift toward the expectation that a good partner should help support the family, turning small requests into burdensome obligations. When John expresses his concerns, Mia explains that in her culture, love inherently involves taking care of family responsibilities, leaving him confused and increasingly trapped by these hidden costs. This experience serves as a strong warning. If you truly desire a healthy relationship in the Philippines, never get involved financially until you are completely sure of the other person's true intentions. Real love should not come with unspoken debts or constant financial demands. Always communicate clearly about family roles and money matters to protect yourself from future regrets.